Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Restituto. I'm a musician from Northport, New York, and today we have the absolute pleasure of having Zephyr Avalon here on the channel. Very talented artist, producer. Zephyr, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Oh, the honor is mine, my friend.
Yeah.
We've been talking for 5 minutes. It's already an honor to talk to me. Wow, I like
Yeah.
this guy a lot.
Right. Well, I've been on the road all year long, as you know. I've been home maybe 2 weeks, and it's just been a long, amazing, rewarding, but also hectic year of
Mm.
travel and not being home very much. And so I finally got a chance to go back through my DMs and find you and a couple other people who asked me to come on their podcast, and I thought this would be a cool thing to do in my time off. So
Well, I am honored that you'd come back and remembered me.
yeah.
Well, cool, man. So, for people that aren't super familiar with your story and what you do and who you are, personally, also in the music industry, like I'd love for you to go back into your story and kind of just share with as much detail as you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. So basically, I'm from the Bay Area. I was born in San Francisco proper, and then moved up to Marin County about 4 years later, when my parents super luckily were able to buy a house up there in the early '90s when it was
Hmm.
maybe a fifth of the price of houses there now, probably a sixth actually. It's just insane up there. But basically, both of my parents, their musical background, and back then the mecca for them was being in San Francisco and being a part of that scene. I guess my dad was studying composition. He studied at UCSD and also at University of Illinois. He was trying to get into like, modern composition. He was interested in Stockhausen and tape loops and stuff like that. My mom was she was studying to be a classical flutist. She studied at Yale, and
Wow.
that might suggest an affluent background on her end. Nothing could be further from the truth. She was actually a full ride scholarship student to Yale.
Wow.
So as you can imagine, my mom, she's something of a perfectionist, especially when it comes to music. And kind of growing up in that environment, my dad also being into playing rock music, being way into progressive rock, especially like things like King Crimson. We actually just went and saw them the
Hmm.
other night in LA. It was awesome. I was kind of exposed at a very young age to very complex types of music, whether it was,
Hmm.
it was a lot of Bach was being played on the stereo in the house. Frank Zappa, Tom Petty, just the entire gamut. Also like weird modal jazz, like groups like Oregon. I don't know if anybody's on this podcast has heard of that, but it's this sort of like woodsy modal jazz that came out of the 80s and 90s. I feel like I was exposed at a very young age to super dense and complex music. It's not like they were pressing an earphone to my mom's belly when she was pregnant with me and playing Mozart, like some people suggest you should do if you want your kid to develop an ear early or whatever. But
Hmm.
through all of that, I did develop an ear, and that became apparent when I started playing piano. And I sat down at the piano around age 7 or 8, and I played the first prelude from Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, essentially from memory. I kind of reconstructed it from memory. My mom sat down next to me. She's like, "No, this measures like that. No, that measures like that." And then, anyway, they decided, okay, well, it's time to get him piano lessons. So I was pretty good for my age. I certainly was no child prodigy, but I was moving quickly. I was blazing through the beginner workbooks, and but the problem was that I wasn't reading the music. I was trying to do it all by ear all the time. My teacher was always saying, "Zephyr, look at the music, look at the music," but I'd learn quicker by ear. So my eyesight also was a factor. I mean, I had glasses at the time, but it was still a little bit difficult for me to really like scrutinize what was on a page, and that's a skill that I developed
Hmm.
a few years later when I was in middle school. And so basically, fast forward a couple years, I've done a couple of piano recitals, but I started to kind of plateau when the repertoire gets harder. Piano's incredibly accessible at first, and then becomes an incredibly difficult instrument.
Hmm.
So naturally, I decided to pick a way easier instrument, violin. Um, just kidding. That's arguably the hardest instrument there is, besides trumpet or
Hmm.
oboe. And a couple years of violin led me to decide I wanted to play contrabass. And at the same time, I started taking electric guitar lessons from my uncle. So basically, all of that led me to abandon the difficult instruments and play the easy ones. Except what I've come to learn after many years is that to play any instrument at a high level is difficult. It doesn't matter what the instrument is. It'd be difficult to play the kazoo at a high level, I imagine. Um, so I got into orchestra. I was also learning, cool riffs, Nirvana songs with my uncle. That was kind of the deal my parents made with me, was that you can play electric guitar, but you have to play some instrument that functions in an orchestra. And I just thought, well, what's the closest thing to guitar?
Sure.
Bass,
Yeah.
right? And contrary to what's the misinformation that Black gave us in School of Rock, take a cello, you've got a bass. That's not true, right? Cello and bass are tuned completely differently. So cello is a cello, it's tuned in fifths. Bass is a bass, it's tuned in fifths. So actually, a bass guitar is tuned exactly the same as an upright bass. Therefore, it just made sense. But did it occur to me to play electric bass then? No. I wanted to be the center of attention. I wanted to play guitar. And eventually in high school, when no bands needed a guitarist, but everybody needed a bassist, I just eventually decided to roll over and accept my natural fate as a bass player. So, throughout high school, I was in things like youth orchestra, jazz band, all of that stuff. I never really I had a few attempts to start bands and be one of the cool kids who played the school talent show. And I did a couple of those things, a couple local gigs, but nothing really ever stuck.
Hmm.
And nothing ever really amounted to much more than playing like one or two original songs or a set of covers, and it wasn't really enough for me. I wanted to make my statement on the world. And so when I went to college at UC Santa Cruz, with a bunch of my friends from high school also went there. It was really awesome. I was studying classical bass with my teacher, Barry Green, who I actually established a relationship with from going to a summer camp exclusively for upright bassists as an 11-year-old on to the end of high school.
Hmm.
So I went down there. I didn't know if I was going to major in music. My parents, of course, would have been thrilled if I wanted to major in music, but they're not of the opinion that you should force your kid to do something. They always wanted music to be present in my life, and obviously we know now that music is really good for the development of the brain at a young age. So even if your kid isn't going to pursue music as a career, most parents, I think, want their kid to play a musical instrument if they know that.
Yeah.
So I got to college. I'm studying classical bass. I'm starting to, host little jam sessions. There was a little sort of recreational room at one of the nearby dorms to the dorm I lived on campus the first year. And out of that, we formed a band, and we wanted that band to be sort of a combination of funk and world music influences. So big influences were bands like the Meters, Afrobeat artists such as Fela Kuti, Ethiopian jazz artists such as Mulatu Astatke, other bands like Orgone, Brazilian jazz artists such as I'm spacing on his name right now, Hermeto Pascoal. We were sort of just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck. You can bleep that out if I can't swear. Sorry.
You do, man. It's all good.
Yeah. So I when I was 20, I got obsessed with the Fender Rhodes, which is an electric piano that was invented. I guess it was the 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
It was initially for like wounded military vets, and it would like go over their hospital bed. But eventually it became.
I didn't know that. That's a really interesting little tidbit of information.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what they started
Oh,
at.
well, like that would make sense. After World War One, I'm sorry, World War Two ended in whatever is that? What year did that end? Right around then,
World War
right
II
around the
was, like,
50s.
40, 45, I believe it was.
Yeah, so like you'd have all these wounded vets with like, oh, let's put them in let's
Yeah.
have them play piano. Wow, that's pretty wild, man.
There was also like the Korean War and other wars.
Yeah, in the 50s.
a little
Yeah.
bit later. But in any case, it became that, and then it was like you go to music school, and there's like the classroom of pianos. There's piano lab, right? And there's like 12 pianos, and then there's a master piano that like the teacher has like a microphone that they can talk to the students on their headsets with, and Nobody ever actually used that when I was in college, nor should they. It wouldn't have worked very well. But Rhodes, even the early Rhodes had a system like that. And they're very cool, but they're also very heavy. So in the 70s, they had an 88 key version and they had a 73 key version. I got a 73. I found it on Craigslist, and I was way into like all 70s jazz, like Herbie Hancock, the album Thrust. A lot of Brazilian jazz uses Rhodes. My dad described it once as too much of a good thing. So at college, I'm broke. I got no money, but I found this Rhodes here that for
Which aren't cheap.
no, they're not cheap now, but back then I found this for $650 on
Oh,
Craigslist.
wow.
So me and my friends, we got
I'm
my
so jealous, man. It's like that's the one of the dream instruments I want to add to my studio, man. The Rhodes keyboards are so like a real Fender Rhodes, man. Oh my gosh.
It's great. I mean, I use Keyscape half the time anyway because that's so good. And that's not a plug. I'm not sponsored by them, but they're great. Keyscape is really great. But nothing really replaces the real deal. And if you listen to the music I put out under my name, Zephyr Avalon, or the music I put out with me and my girlfriend, Olivia Jane, there's a lot of Rhodes present in that music. It's stuck with me to this day. Rhodes has just always been my favorite keyboard. I love other keyboards too, Mellotrons, such as this one here. Wurlitzers, they're all great. Me and my girlfriend have a game we play called Rhodes or Whirly, where
Uh,
through a track and I'll say, "Hey Olivia, Rhodes or Whirly," and she's right, like almost all the time. So she knows the difference. The Rhodes is a little bit more dreamy sounding. The Wurlitzer is a little bit more percussive and distorted sounding. But a Rhodes can be kind of distorted if you hit it hard enough too. But anyway, I was way into the sound of the Fender Rhodes in college, and so I got a Rhodes, and we started this band. We called it Copacetic, and we were playing all kinds of music. I was switching off. I was playing guitar on some songs. I was playing bass on some songs. I was playing keys on some songs. A couple years went by. We were just playing, having a blast, playing house parties, playing everybody's keg parties around Santa Cruz, playing in whatever bars or clubs would have us in the area. We'd even go over to San Jose to play some, in hindsight, very weird, shitty dive bars. And at the time, I was like, "Oh, well drinks are $4. What a ripoff!" It was insane how times have changed. But
yeah.
yeah, but we were just having a blast and making the most of the scene over there. At the same time, I was studying, classical and jazz, playing in school jazz ensembles, and starting some of my own outside, doing a little bit of jazz gigs around town. So I believe, like, I could say that's kind of when my professional career as a musician started, unless you want to count maybe when I was 17 or 18 and I got hired to play like a local musical in my hometown of San Rafael, California, which is where my parents moved in Marin when I was 4, and still live to this very day. But yeah, that's kind of where my career started, was sort of
Sure.
just being around the college scene, playing little gigs, playing as the house bassist for the Santa Cruz Jazz Jam over at Bocce's Cellar, and taking lessons with whoever around town would have me. Because the UC system, UC Santa Cruz, is a great like research oriented school. It's not so much performance oriented, although they do have a really great like vocal performance program. And shout out to Carlton Hester, who runs the jazz program there, and Stan Poplin and a few others. They did what they could, but the focus was not on jazz in that program. It was very limited. Some of the courses you could only take once every other year. So the strongest, most funded programs were the classical guitar and the classical vocal programs at Santa Cruz. But we had Barry Green teaching there. He's a great teacher. So I got everything out of that program that I could, and I definitely got a lot of knowledge out of it. Took some great classes with some great professors. No shade, just I needed a more performance-oriented jazz program. So once I played in a few more bands along the same lines for the rest of my time in Santa Cruz. I eventually decided that I was going to finish my major in music the final year I was in college, because I had spent the first 3 years. I spent the first year figuring out what I wanted to study. I was undeclared as a major. I was going to do environmental science, and then I was going to do, I don't know, I was even considering studying anthropology at one point, or economics at one point. I was taking all these math classes, calculus and stuff like that, which ironically served me later on in a very unexpected way. I was eventually landed on majoring in philosophy. I really loved
Wow.
philosophy. It was sort of like when I took an intro to philosophy class, I realized like, oh my God, like this is what my mind is doing all the time. And I started getting way into that stuff, reading all the texts. And there's one class called Intro to Logic that is essentially like, I guess you have to construct like math proofs, but out of letters. I won't go into too much detail, but it was a weed out class, and a lot of people wouldn't be able to move on with the major because they would fail it. So somehow it clicked for me. It was kind of like doing Sudoku puzzles or something like that. So I was tutoring that, and I was like, I'm probably going to study law. I'm probably going to go to law school. That was what I was telling myself all through college. I started visiting law schools and taking practice tests and stuff, and eventually realized, what am I doing? Like my entire life, all I'm doing all the time is playing music. I'm in 5 bands, you know. So I decided I wanted a little bit more of a performance-oriented music school experience.
Mm.
So I decided to apply to a couple of music schools for a master's program in Southern
Wow.
California. And at that point, I just wanted to be in LA. That's all I knew. I wasn't ready for New York. I guess now I could go to New York, but what I could go anywhere. I could go to Nashville. I could go anywhere there's an airport, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But I really wanted to be in LA. I had visited LA. My dad had taken me down here. He was very supportive. He and my mom, we came down here and went to all the coolest jazz clubs, like
Mm.
the Baked Potato, the Blue Whale, which is currently closed thanks to COVID, but will be possibly reopening in a new location soon.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
and many new clubs here have opened since, but those two clubs, the Blue Whale and the Baked Potato, they were my initial impression of LA and the LA music scene, and I was so impressed by what I saw. There's this pianist, Josh Nelson, great jazz pianist who I saw. Um, Bands like Knee Body really were weird, eclectic, almost fusion, but too technical to even be fusion, like on a conceptual level. But all the musicians are ridiculously talented in those bands. There was this like progressive big band led by a guy named John DeVersa who now runs the Frost School of Music at University of Miami.
Wow.
So I saw his band, and I was just like, no question, I need to come to LA any way I can, and I might be able to get a little bit of financial help from my parents if I go to grad school on a paying my rent level, not necessarily paying for school. I still had to
Yeah.
take out loans like everybody else. And I was like, I don't know how the hell I'm going to pay off those student loans. But eventually that worked itself out in my life. But that's later in the story. So basically, at this point, I'm studying at I got into a school called Cal Arts, which was started by Walt Disney in the 60s.
Wow.
And I was over the moon because all of those musicians who I had mentioned before, Josh Nelson, John DeVersa, etc., a lot of them had attended Cal Arts.
Oh wow.
And so the thing about Cal Arts is if you go there with very little discipline or technical background or, theory knowledge as like an undergrad, they'll teach you the courses. But the way the school is structured is to inspire creativity. It's not the most rigid, crack the whiplash type of program. Sure, you'll have juries and such, but they want to give you the space to develop your own voice there,
Very interesting.
which is so helpful when you're at the point where you're ready to do that, which I was when I was going in there. But if you still need a little bit of discipline implemented and professionalism and all of that, I I have found that some students would go there for a year as undergrads and not know what to do with themselves and leave. And that's the bottom line here. It's not anything against CalArts. I love David Reutzstein, the program director. They're amazing guy, and all the teachers I studied with there: Darek Olas, Larry Kuntz, Joe LaBarbera, incredible faculty. It's just not for everybody. You have to kind of be internally motivated
Hmm.
to get what the school has to offer. But for master's degree students, in almost every case, it's incredible for that exact reason.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not loaded down with coursework. I mean, there is a little bit of coursework, but if you take, sorry, I'm going to adjust this because I'm leaning over and it might look weird. If you take courses that are going to be a lot of coursework, you're going to know what you're getting into, but most of it is designed to let you play as much as you want, or you have a recording project, or you want to collaborate with other mediums. You know, it's this amazing art school where there's several mediums under one roof: animation, dance, film, music, art, visual art, photography, graphic design. I think there's even a school of writing there.
Wow.
Sorry if I missed anything to everybody from CalArts listening out there. But yeah, and every Thursday they'd have something called Gallery Night where there'd be these live shows and everybody would have these art installations all around campus, and there was free tecates provided. And everybody would just get drunk and walk around and, you know, mingle with each other. And it was just a really conducive environment for collaboration and creativity and such, especially when I was there from 2013 to 2015. So at that point, that's where I kind of made a lot of the connections, some of whom I still work today. And one of my friends named Amir Uzman, he's a drummer. He was initially a drummer. He went to UC Santa Cruz with me too. We played in the big band together. He also went to CalArts, and he sort of coached me on like what to expect when there. And he and many others that gave me the confidence to just take the plunge and be like, yeah, I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to study down there, and I'm going to immerse myself, and I'm going to try and do this, you know.
Very
and
cool.
I was not confident about the career. My dad was, you know, my parents, they're very knowledgeable musicians, and maybe they didn't think I had prepared enough. Maybe they didn't think I had practiced enough. My dad was like, you know, the Air Force band is looking for he's got a salaried position. You just have to go through base training if you want to apply. I got the name of the gunnery sergeant right here. You know, and it's like, no, you'll make $85K a year. And I thought, well, I don't want to go into the military because at the end of the day, I'm still in the reserves.
Yeah.
Nothing but respect to people who do go into the military, of course, including my boss, Bryan. Nothing but love and respect for service members. But it wasn't what I thought was most conducive to developing my musical career in LA at the time, was going where I'd be on a base and not around any of the inspiring stuff that I had found in
Very
LA.
interesting.
Right. So
Yeah.
I decided to stay in school, and you know, and I remember one of my teachers, Joe LaBarba, who was the drum professor at CalArts, I was just expressing all this anxiety about like, well, what's going to happen? And he just said like, listen, Zephyr, like, you're a good musician. You show up on time. And I've never met a musician with those qualities in LA who didn't work. And basically what he was saying to me was just chill out and enjoy, like, learn and enjoy yourself and grow from this experience. And, you know, que sera, sera. You don't get to know the future, but you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after grad school was over, and I'd done a couple of recitals and built my sort of connections, and including my friend Amir, who had also gone to undergrad with me, had also graduated CalArts with a master's in composition and performance. He and I kind of grew apart for many years. He started touring a lot. He was just not around a lot. I'd run into him every now and then. And you know how it is with old friends. You pick up where you leave off, right? I moved out. I started paying my own rent. Once I moved out of Santa Clarita and down into Los Angeles, I rented a room, and my girlfriend at the time, she had a friend who had an open room. I moved in. The rent was $525. I was playing 150 gigs, $50 to $100, playing out in front of a dim sum restaurant in Pasadena for 3 or 4 hours, just playing jazz standards, hacking away, you know. And eventually, more and more of the people saw me around, and they started to call me more. And I always tell everybody, like, if you have no time, in fact, I said this to somebody I noticed you had on your podcast when I was looking through, not to name any names, but
I'm curious who it is, though. Can you share or no? Whatever.
Well,
What was
I
it?
don't want to embarrass anybody,
Oh, okay, okay,
but
okay.
and it's not that this is super embarrassing, but they were just like they were really trying. They were on a time crunch for reasons out of their control.
Hmm.
The amount of time they could be in LA, and they really needed like a big gig to come through, so
Sure.
they could stay. And they were just like, man, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay here. I'm like, well, you need to allow yourself 2.5 years. Everybody needs 2.5 years to because if you come here with zero connections, you can't expect it to just materialize out of thin air.
Sure.
Maybe you get really lucky and land a big gig the first week, but then you're on that big gig and you're not in LA making connections.
Hmm.
And so ultimately, there's no way around just paying your dues and
Yeah.
being around. And eventually, you become a part of something. Maybe it's a weekly gig, maybe it's a tour, but like something where you spend prolonged amounts of time with people where they get to know who you really are. And eventually, that becomes what's most marketable about you
Hmm.
as a musician. Obviously, the skills are a given. You have to be able to be professional.
Sure.
You have to be able to play. You have to be versatile. Of course, everybody has their niches. Not everybody is amazing at every little thing, but like one week I'm playing Zach Bryan, the next week I'm doing a gospel church gig down in San Pedro or out in Pasadena. Next week I'm doing CCM up in Woodland Hills. I host a weekly jam that is a combination of like instrumental R&B, soul, and fusion out
Huh.
in Glendale. Like there's just
Wow.
there's the wedding band thing and
Yeah.
there's a jazz gig thing, but like, some people are like way into playing Irish music and like some people are into rockabilly. I'm not really a rockabilly guy. I like rockabilly, but I don't have the like crazy slap thing down like some of those upright bassists.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a given. You have to be versatile and you have to be skilled to a certain level, right? Have to be able to learn music. You have to be able to read
Yeah.
charts. Sometimes you have to be able to read really difficult charts, but most of the time that's not going to be the case. Most of the time it's just a lead sheet, if anything. Most of the time you're making the lead sheet because they don't give you charts, you know? But you have to be able to learn high volumes of music,
Hmm.
and if you're reading, you better do it discreetly. So all of this falls under the guise of professionalism. So assuming your professionalism is in order, as it certainly was for the guest you had on your podcast, who I will not name publicly, amazing, very talented person. All the professionalism was in order, but they still needed the time to just immerse, and they were on a time crunch. And when I realized why, I was like, oh man, that sucks. Like I don't know what you would do in that situation, but if you can allow yourself 2.5 years, things will start to happen for you if you're a good person. And I guess at one point, right after I graduated grad school, I got a little tour. It was a weird tour. I was Mac Cosmetics, the makeup company.
Yeah. Yeah.
They had a branding campaign that was somehow centered around jazz. And
Huh.
one of the guys who went to Cal Arts was working for this contracting company at the time, and he sent me this email. He's like, "Hey, you should come audition for this." So I went down. They had sent me pictures of the outfit they wanted, so I went to H&M. I bought an outfit similar to the outfit they wanted, spent $70. I really invested, and I went in, prepared, knew all the songs. I played about 30 seconds of walking bass line, and they cut me off. They're like, "You're amazing." And then I walked outside, and the guy's like, "Dude, I think you got the gig." And so that was like right out of, and I was like, "Wow, I'm just killing it. Like I don't even need to try." And so that gig, they'd fly us out to various malls around the country on the weekends, and we'd play this exhibit on Saturdays and Sundays. We were making pretty decent money for how much time it actually required. There were several musicians who are much older than me on the gig. One guy, Joe Barry, he plays saxophone for M83 now and co-wrote their last couple of records. He was the music director of that gig. But once that gig ended, I mean, they were on to their next branding campaign. There
Hmm.
was no more gig, and I was just at home kind of paying rent with the money, the lump sum of money I had made off that gig. And eventually that money ran out, and weird things happened at my apartment complex, causing me and my friends to have to move. And now suddenly I've moved into this house and just paid a security deposit, and oh my God, I'm broke, and there's not enough gigs coming in, and I don't know what the
Hmm.
f- I'm gonna do, right?
Hmm.
I said, Mom, I'm I need to borrow like $500. And my mom, of course, is like, yeah, of course, anything you need. You don't have to pay me back unless you want to, you know. But I said, no, it's just I don't want to make a habit of this. I very decidedly cut myself off when I graduated college and was like, I'm gonna pay my own way. Besides, my cell phone bill or whatever. Um, I do pay my cell phone bill now. Full disclosure. Um, but
It's one of those things that like for
yeah,
the last
that,
thing to go.
that's becoming a man. Actually, I'm still on the family plan. I just paid my portion because
Me too,
it's
man.
still
Me
it's
too.
still
I send
cheaper to
money.
be
I
on.
have a direct deposit every month that gets drawn out every month. It's so
Dude,
funny.
I like that you automate your finances. That's very that's very next level. Um, I could talk to you for 45 minutes about that probably. But but anyway, I'm flat broke, and I remember I just bought this really cool bass. It was a Korean bass. It's actually this bass right here. It's a Mulan 5-string J bass. And at the time, this company Mulan, they were really blowing up. This one bassist who was a huge inspiration to me, Tim LaFave, who played on David Bowie's last record, Black Star, among other things. He was really promoting them, and a friend of mine named Dmitry Gorodetsky, who most recently was featured in Usher's Super Bowl performance,
Wow.
he was like, I want to come over and play that bass sometime. And I'm like, well, I want to talk to you about how the heck you're doing what you did. At the time, he was touring with Charlie Puth.
Mm.
I think this was the We Don't Talk tour at the time. It was like 2017, 2018. So Dimitri had left the gig a few years ago, and I
Okay.
think got the Usher gig. And at the time, he to me, he had the world on a string.
Sure.
Little did I know that even though he's got a good gig, he still comes home. He's got to hustle like everybody else.
Mm.
I talked to him, and he's playing my bass, and I'm just like, man, like, how do you do it? Like, how do you get to where you're at? I just feel
Hmm.
like I feel like I got no money. Nobody's calling me. And he just cut me off. He says, well, why would they do that? Why would your friends not call you for gigs? And I said, yeah, I guess there's no reason. I mean, my friends seem to like me. He's like, are you making the hang? And I was like, well, I go out sometimes, but it's kind of expensive to go out, and you got to buy a drink. You got to support the venue. He's like, I'd spend my last dime on the hang, man. It's kind of like what Bill Gates said about publicity. He said I spend my last dime on PR, right? Like I spend my last dime on the hang because when you have no money, your network is your net worth, right?
Mm.
At
Wow.
that point, I reached outward. I stopped going inward and feeling sorry for myself and wondering if this was going to work out, wondering if I was going to have to go uh, drive drive Uber or which I never did. I always had a thing against things like DoorDash and Uber. No disrespect to people who do it, of course, but I always felt like it was so predatory that they just so conveniently have you putting wear and tear on your car while they pay you like absolute dog shit. And I
Hmm.
just thought I will never do that. I will never do that. Like when I was a teenager, I got into smoking weed and stuff like that, but I told myself I will never do drugs because I saw all these kids just casually selling weed and just getting screwed over so badly for it. They'd all get caught. I was just like, okay, I'm never gonna. I'm drawing a boundary for myself. I'll not do that because I'm not gonna get taken advantage of in that way
Hmm.
if I can avoid it. And I was able to avoid it. I started going out as much. I started going out to a different jam or hang every night. Um, Gigs started to pick up. There were some great musicians in the area. One guy, a saxophonist friend of mine named Kyle O'Donnell, we had some casual jazz gig down in Long Beach. We got paid maybe $75 for it. I'm like, how are you doing, man? He's like, good. How are you doing? I said, I don't know. I'm kind of stressed out. I'm happy to be working tonight, but I'm not working very much. And he's like, I'll give you a gig. You want 2 gigs? Here's 2 gigs right now. And he called me every couple of weeks for those gigs. And
Wow.
him and others. I eventually a friend of mine named Ian Roller, another great saxophonist in LA. He hit me up, said we need an additional bassist for this band that plays at Universal Studios, and that became like a steady source of income for 3 years. I mean, obviously it didn't pay for everything, but it's nice to have steady gigs.
Sure, absolutely.
And then right around the same time, I lived down the street from this bar called the San Fernando, and this guy, Joey Leffitz, a drummer friend of mine, he's like, I got a gig at this bar, and it was like a new bar. Well, really, it was an old bar, but it had been rebranded as a craft cocktail bar. It had previously been a dive bar, but it had been bought and it was under new ownership. And so I go in, and he's playing with this guitarist named Eliadine Anbar, who is now one of my best friends. He plays for Brooks Nielsen of the Growlers. They're out on tour right now. But they were playing with him and this other bassist. I think his name was Carter Lee. I haven't seen much of him in recent years, but I think he got more into the teaching side of things and might have moved out of LA. But eventually he didn't want to do the weekly gig anymore, and I'd been there every week, and they're like, well, you want to start doing it? And at points, the other guys got busy, and I sort of started taking the reins, running this thing, and I was like, we should make this into a jam session. And, I mean, I was there 2 nights ago. We're still doing it to this day.
Wow.
I just decided, like, as much as I turned to my community for help when I was down, like, I want to create that community for others.
Sure.
I promise all of this is relevant and leads up to how I ended up on the Zach Bryan gig.
No, I believe it. It's a great. Well, one thing I admire about the story is the authenticity behind it. Like it's again. I mean, I said this, when we were in our green room, if we would want to call it, before we started filming. The aspect of like that, so many people see, wow, I want to do what you're doing, but I'm still playing in my bedroom. How in the world did I get there? How did you get there? I mentioned this a couple of times in the past, the story of Ed Sheeran. I distinctly remember it, who's now one of the biggest artists in the world. But I got into him when he was kind of just popping off back in 2012, 2013. He had just released his Plus album, and he was just starting to become like an international name. I think he might have been opening, either just currently opening for Taylor Swift, or like hadn't even gotten that gig yet. And he read an interview. I think it was actually in a magazine, which is crazy. Like that they were still like, that's how long ago it was. And he talked about that. They were like, well, how did you, start to build this name for yourself? And he's like, well, last year I played. It was something crazy. It was like I played 370 gigs in the year.
Holy
and I was like, cool, I'm willing to do that.
More than one a day.
Yeah, but I was like, how in the world did you, like, how did you even, I can't even book one gig. This is 10 years ago. I'm like,
right.
How did you book 3? I'm like, I'll put in the work. I'm happy to put in the work, but I don't even know how to get the work. And that's kind of where this, like, I've as a musician myself, I wanted to document my journey, because everybody's journey is different, right? I can't, even Ed Sheeran told me how he got the gigs, like, it wouldn't necessarily work for me because that's his story. But I can gain something out of the insight of, oh wow, that's cool that you reached out to this person, you reached out, you know what I mean? So I started a daily journal, actually, and I was like, you know what? One day I hope to be where Ed ends up, and I'm like, I'm gonna document my journey and just this is how I got here, and I made $4 this day. I lost this gig. This person did that. And because that's kind of where this podcast comes from. It's like I want to hear other people's journeys, because it's encouraging to hear, wow, you were flat broke and now look where you are today. And not that I'm not talking just money. I'm just talking about like even just making a career out of music. You almost had to drive Uber, your biggest estate. You know what I mean? Like
right. I mean, it didn't come to that. I initially, I started doing more gigs just by reaching out to my community, and got to start doing these regular gigs, which really tremendously helped, because that's where you build a rapport with people, is by like hanging with them and building something with them, whether it's tour or not, whether it pays $75 a week or $5,000 a week. It doesn't matter. If you're building something together with people and everybody's invested for the same reason, there's a magic to that, right?
Yeah.
And but additionally, I started applying to various like teaching academies, and I got a little roster of students, and I was able to go. Eventually, I was able to sort of. The students some of them stuck around for a while. One of them I taught all the way until he went to college. I got him into music school. He studied
Wow.
at UC Irvine with the same instructor I studied with at Cal Arts because everybody's hustling. Everybody's,
Yeah.
even the professors are teaching at multiple schools, and they've
Yeah.
kind of, there's just sort of this group of elite jazz musicians who sort of monopolized the LA in a way as far as jazz education goes, and that's what, in my opinion, makes LA one of the leading jazz cities. And
Mm.
people say, well, New York is better. Okay, yeah, for authentic, like bebop music, there's more of that going on there, and it's got so much history there. How could you deny it? But LA has a lot of that going on too,
Mm.
and a lot of people from New York, a lot of jazz musicians, big names, are moving to LA now.
Yeah.
So I was able to build that and doing a little bit of teaching, and yeah, it wasn't much, but I was able to cover my $750 in rent and $15 in utilities or whatever it cost, and go out to eat once or twice a week, even go out to the bars to hang with people playing other gigs. But I still felt like, I don't know, like I feel like I'm just one of the hangers around. I got to build something even better. And I decided, all right, I'm going to invest in like individual relationships with people. And I started reaching out to individuals, and I was like, let's just hang out. Like, let me show you. I had gotten into Ableton around that time. I'd started making little beats and stuff like that. And I was like, I feel like these are cool. Like, could we work on something? I'd reach out to friends who did like film composition and stuff. I'm like, can I like help you with like the more busy work side of the more musical busy work side of things while you handle the bigger logistic things? How can I be of service to you? Like, is there a way we can work together? And some guys are like, I think what you're doing is dope, but I got it covered. But like, good to know you can do that. Eventually, there were a few singers who started reaching out to me. I started producing tracks for them. At the same time, I was getting really busy with musical work. I went on a couple tours. 2018, 2019, I started touring with a singer named Haley Reinhart, who is to this day one of the most talented people I've ever worked with. She's incredible.
Probably the best cover of "Can't Help Falling in Love."
Yeah.
In fact, my wife walked down the aisle to that song.
No way. That's
Yeah.
insane. Yeah.
Either I did or she did. One of us walked down the aisle to the Haley Reinhardt's version of that song.
Haley Reinhart, and with Casey Abrams accompanying her on piano, of course.
Yeah.
Casey Bassey, also a bass player. I just got to see them the other week. Haley invited me to her birthday hang out in Hollywood. Really good to reconnect with them.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I was like, I had some friends who were playing with Postmodern Jukebox, and I was like, what's Postmodern Jukebox? Well, it's this group that sort of makes sort of a cabaret performance where people dress up in these old-timey like 20s, 30s outfits and do like jazz versions of contemporary pop tunes. I'm saying this for anybody who may be listening because
Yeah.
I know you know this, but Haley she was kind of the trailblazer for them, if you ask me. There was sort of a mutually beneficial thing that happened there where they featured her as one of their singers. And she had been a contestant on American Idol. I think she got like second or third place in 2010. Should have been first, but that's show business. At any rate, she, I think, had been in some record contracts and decided she wanted to go her way as an independent artist. And I think that was one of the important steps. I'm not going to say the first step because I don't really know. You don't really know until you ask somebody exactly what the first step was or wasn't about something. But one of the big steps for her in establishing herself as an independent artist was, I think, that Creep video, and as well as the Can't Help Falling in Love cover. Those were huge things that she did, that she's widely known for. And so I was like, holy shit, Haley is so sick. Like, I would really love to tour with her. I've met her one time because she was friends with my friend Balam Garcia, who's a great guitarist, and he invited her to a record release party for trio music of his that we played up in Sunland. And I had met her once. I'm like, man, I didn't realize who she was when I met her, but this is insane. Like, she's absolutely batshit amazing, So a few months go by, and one day I'm like just like sort of nothing's really going on. It's February in LA. No one's got any gigs. It's sort of the winter slump for gigs. Things start to pick up in March usually, but you got to budget for those lonely winter months. You budget with your extra Christmas gig money for those lonely January and February winter months. You'll notice that January 1st, the New Year's gig's over, a week goes by and people realize they got no gigs, and they start posting like limited time only. I got a couple extra lesson slots open. It's like, yeah,
exactly.
you got everything open, motherfucker. And so do I. So let's just call it what it is. But yeah, lessons limited discount was $250. Now it's $75. I've seen every trick in the book. It's fun. That's the hustle. You got to do what you. But it's just
to
funny.
avoid driving Uber, right?
Yeah, well, when you've seen it every year, it's just like that time of year again.
No, I'm saying though, you do what you got to do to avoid driving.
So it's February. It's a winter gig slump. I'd been on the porch reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Great book. Changed my life for what it's worth. I think it's even on that bookshelf in the shot. I'm taking a shower. I had just recently seen Haley post tour dates on Instagram. I just thought, fuck, she is going on tour on her own. Like, that's going to be awesome. I wonder who gets to be in her band. I come out of the shower. I see a missed call from my friend Balam. And I'm just like, wow. Like, he'd been doing some corporate gigs with her. I knew he was playing with her, but he had been playing bass. But he'd been telling me, like, yeah, I really don't want to be playing bass. I'm a guitarist. I want to play guitar for her. I'm hoping I can get to a place where I'm her guitarist. And I was like, oh man, that's awesome. He's like, obviously I'd call you for bass if the opportunity ever opened up. And I remembered that conversation. Remembered seeing her post the tour dates, and I see a missed call from him, and I'm like, no fucking way. And I call him back. I'm like, what's up, dude? You saw your call. He's like, oh yeah, well, Haley's looking for a bass player, and it pays this much a week, and like, do you want to do it? I'm like, well, do I need to audition? He's like, no, man, she trusts me. Like, and she's seen you play. Like, I'm like, okay, what do I do? He's like, you got to call her. I'm like, oh fuck, I have to call Haley Reinhart. He's like, she's waiting for your call, bro. I'm like, all right, give me her number. And I'm like shaking. I'm so fucking nervous. And in hindsight, it's so silly. Like, she's the nicest person ever.
And people are people, but I totally get what you're saying, man. Absolutely.
And I called her, and I'm like, hi, is this Haley? She's like, yeah, is this Zephyr? I'm like, it is. And yeah, we had a little chat. I was like, yeah, anything you need, I'm there. We did one little recording session. I was on one track of her Lo-Fi Soul album. Some way, somehow, one of the ballads. The bowed upright bass is me. Most of it was done by, like, she's been like sort of, she hires producers that she works with, and they usually handle the musicians. That's also what happened with American Heartbreak with Zach, right? We weren't on that record because Eddie Spear, the producer for that record, as well as many others. Shout out to Eddie, great guy. I love working with Eddie when I get to. But at that point, he hadn't really worked with us, so he was just like, I'm going to hire a Nashville band. And Zach's like, all right, this is my first like full-length album where I'm not just like DIY.
Yeah.
Airbnb with a mattress on the wall, you know, like this. I'm gonna let the producer make this call. And I think after that experience, he was like, no, like, I want to have my guys at least some of the time. So
yeah,
but I'm still jumping ahead. But anyway, I do the tour with Haley, and it's amazing. It's also a grind. We're touring.
Touring is always a grind.
We're touring in a Sprinter van. We're in some cases, playing the show and then leaving at 1 a.m. to get from Kansas to Texas for a radio promo thing. Or, the first night in New York, Haley's like, Haley got the flu the week of our rehearsals. So we did a week of rehearsals without her. And she came in like one day and she's like, all right, I have a couple notes, but mostly you guys sound good. I'll see you at the first gig, And so like, we really all had to come through for her that week, but I think we did. And the first gig went great. And then we learned that we had a radio promo thing in Boston the next morning, and we had to leave at like 4 a.m. And at that point, me and one of the guitarists had already helped ourselves to a few cocktails at the bar. we're just like, all right, we're not sleeping tonight. So we get the sprinter, we do the, and eventually, you catch up on sleep, but it was very like go, 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 go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it was so musically rewarding.
Mm.
I'll never forget that tour. And while I did a few tours before that, like I feel like that was that was the beginning of my really impactful musical touring career. That's the first time I felt like I'm fucking doing something and
Yeah,
touring
sure.
all around. I did one more tour with her in the fall of that year, and all the while still holding down my local gigs, doing 3 gigs a day, doing weddings,
Wow.
stuff.
What does that look like really quick? 3 gigs a day.
Well, 3 gigs a day will look like, oh, I have a church gig in the morning. I have an afternoon or a brunch gig, or when I did the Universal Studios gig, that was always
Oh my
open.
gosh, that's
Then
crazy.
you
What do
might
you mean
have
a
like
gig?
then you might have like an afternoon gig, and then you'd have like a late gig. You know,
Wow.
yeah. And sometimes it would work out. You do 3 gigs a day, or 2 gigs and a lesson, or
Yeah. Oh
whatever,
my gosh,
whatever
man.
combination. It's more often 2 gigs than three, but like I say 3 gigs a day because sometimes you're living on that freeway and putting 25,000 miles a year on your car. You
Oh
know,
my
yeah,
gosh.
L.A. kills cars. That's a
Oh yeah.
never heard a truer word. But
That's crazy.
yeah. So anyway, eventually, the fall rolls around. We do another like shorter run. The first run we did is like 5 weeks, but the second one we did was like 2 weeks. I'm all excited. Haley's like, the next year we're touring Europe. I'm just like, holy shit, like we're fucking doing it. This is gonna blow up. March 15th, 13th, 2020 rolls around, and you know what happened.
Yeah.
Everybody loses all their gigs. And I was so devastated. I mean, I was so spiteful. I was so angry at the world.
Wow.
I got into, I was like running miles and miles every day just to like stay sane. And I was living on Instagram. I was single at the time. I'd had a couple of situationships.
Situationships.
I had a couple situationships over the past couple of years that just sort of
That
fit.
sounds like a great country song.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely.
I think that needs to be written.
One artist, Snow Allegra, who I also recorded for at one point, she has a song called "Situationship." That's actually where I learned the term. But
I've never even heard that. That's
a
there you go.
situationship is where you're like regularly seeing somebody, but you don't really know if it's a thing or not. And the truth is, it's not a thing, and you should stop if it's hurting you, because it's a thing. But yeah, for all my younger listeners, if you're in a situationship and it's hurting you, just stop, just disengage, because somebody else out there will not treat you like that. So
Um.
don't wait till you're 30 to learn that, like I did. And thankfully now I'm in a very loving and healthy relationship that I never planned to leave. So yeah. So but anyway, I'm single. I'm just like going stir crazy. I'm in my 1 bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And I'm living alone at the time. I was like, wow, great time I chose to start living alone. But actually, in hindsight, I'm very thankful I got to live alone because I didn't have to like adopt whatever my roommates' opinions were about COVID.
Ah.
I could make decisions for myself. It's like I could decide what I was comfortable with. I didn't have to like
Yeah.
abide by other people's rules.
Yeah.
That was
That's
that was
fair.
a
That's
hard
great.
time, but it was great.
Yeah.
And I'd play like any gig I was able to play. I I was, as soon as the vaccine was available, I went and got the first 2 shots. I didn't even know about the debate. I was just like, I just want to get back to work.
Mm.
Put the shots in my arm. I'll get back to work. And then it became this like huge explosive thing. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna leave the arguing to you guys because I don't have a dog in that fight anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess everybody had a dog in that fight if it was a more deadly disease, but let's not get into that.
Yeah.
Cut that part out. No, I'm kidding. But yeah. So eventually, I started getting to do the San Fernando again, and we were doing it outside. And my friend Amir, who I mentioned earlier, he starts coming and hanging out. And this it's around like 2021. Gigs are starting to slowly trickle back
Hmm.
in. They're starting to lift restrictions even in LA where it was very, very, very strict and
Yeah.
ridiculous. And Amir keeps coming up to San Fernando. We're indulging heavily in alcohol and having a great time every week. packing the patio, packing that outdoor patio. Everybody's social distancing. Everybody's 6 feet away. You know, that kind of vibe. You remember the outdoor
Hmm.
dining era.
This is crazy time, man. It doesn't even.
But
It sounds like a movie.
but we were packing it out because
Yeah.
people were starved for live
Yeah.
music,
Yeah. Yeah.
and people who I'd seen post incendiary diatribes against anyone having any fun on the internet a couple of months before. Also, they're all pouring in, and I'm just like, see, we all wanted it. Like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
we're,
Yeah.
we're so fucking back right now. Like let's
Yeah.
just have a community again. Like it's been a hard year and a half. And one
Yeah.
morning, Amir texts me, and he's like, "Do you know anyone who plays the cajon?" And I'm like, "Bro, you're a drummer. Like you know that hardly anybody just plays the cajon. Like you play the cajon. What are you talking about? Like I'm just gonna give you names of drummers you already know."
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I think I might play cajon on this gig. Do you want to play bass for this country thing? And I'm like, well, tell me more. He's like, it's a singer songwriter named Zach Bryan. He's doing like a benefit for veteran suicides. It's
Oh.
hosted by the football player Christian McCaffrey. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina next weekend, and
A little last minute.
fly you in 1 day of rehearsal, do the gig, fly home. And I was like, are you? Is the fucking Pope Catholic? You know, absolutely. Get me out there, and we show up. I get to rehearsal.
So, what kind of band was it to have a cajon?
I think that initially they were trying to do like he thought it was going to be more like a acoustic guitar and cajon set.
Uh huh.
Show up and it's full band. Amir's like playing the full drum set.
Oh,
He was
okay.
pretty clear from the very beginning. He's like, Zach, I'll play drums while we figure out this band, but like I'm on the management side of things. So it turns out Amir had been tour managing. He had started working for this artist many years prior named Oliver Tree. Started out as his drummer, started doing sound for him, eventually started doing tour managing and production managing. And Oliver's big dog managers saw that he was doing a good job at this, and they were like, "Hey,
Wow.
you want to QB like 7 other artists, make our lives easier so we can
QB
focus on
is.
quarterback."
Oh, wow. Okay, that was.
QB the whole production.
I could
Sorry,
have
I've
gotten that
been
reference if I thought we were talking about football. I thought it was like some music term they didn't know.
I've been in fantasy football land lately.
Ah, that's funny, man. I was
But
like,
but, but anyways,
that's funny.
QB is a term I use frequently to describe
Yeah,
someone who's
that
sort of
makes.
who's
Now I
sort
get
of
it.
making the whole thing happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kingpin, QB, whatever you want to call it. Though I've learned that it's actually more about the running backs and wide receivers, and even the kicker. You know,
Hey, kicker will change the whole game.
absolutely.
Cost you a lot of money.
So anyway, so we show up and it's Zach and it's a couple, Zach, a couple of friends, Graham on guitar, Lucas on fiddle, me and Amir, and Christian McCaffrey's there playing the piano. He gave us all a bottle of
That's cool.
all a bottle of Booker's whiskey, and they're very kind. He invited us out to his place. He was on the Panthers at the time, so we went out to his place.
Wait, what's the relevance to Booker? Is he affiliated or just for fun?
No idea. I might have just been a whiskey he liked, but
Okay, it was such a random fact. I was like,
I know.
was there relevant? Not
I'm
that
just
there is
recounting.
relevant.
I'm recounting my memories. So we did the rehearsal. We learned the songs, and I was just like, all right, well, anything goes. I mean, this is Zach and his friends, and me and Amir. They seemed to know the songs. They had done like some like live streams before I was
Yeah.
involved that Amir had QB'd, and oh yeah, back to Amir. So they had decided, yeah, you can take like all these artists for us, and one of those artists was Zach Bryan.
Hmm.
So things moved pretty quickly. We did that one show; it was sold out. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. I mean, it was all over the place, and we just randomly decided, let's put solos in Revival. I think that was a decision Zach made on stage. In fact, he didn't even tell us. He just started playing breaks and he looked at us, and I was like, oh, okay, because initially Revival was just this like, it's just another one of those songs on Elizabeth. It's a great song, a very
Yeah.
profound and a deep song, but for that matter, but like, it was never like a fan favorite above the others necessarily,
Sure.
the way the boys talk about it anyways. But it very quickly just became this like religious experience for the fans that that day that we played that first show.
Wow.
And we started getting like more calls to fill in for like festival slots where an
Wow.
artist had to back out at the last minute. We played Hinterland Festival. We played at this tailgate in Austin at the Longhorns game. Zach went on stage and went like this. It was pretty funny because they're OU fans. Um, yeah, honestly, that was a savage thing to do, but there was no world in which an Oklahoman is not going to do that, if you know what I'm saying. So we did like a couple like smaller festival things, and then suddenly the promoter's like, "All right, we're going to book you a tour." So November, we do a 5 week tour, November to December, or actually it was the end of October to the beginning of December. But yeah, we did like a 5 week tour. Shows were selling out, and they decided, all right, we're going to do a bigger tour the next year. So all this is to say, like, my friend Amir is the reason I'm there, but it was because he saw me
Mm.
being in some way, not to toot my own horn, I hate to toot my own horn, but like he saw me being like a pillar of the community, and he saw me bringing people together, and he thought, all right, like
And you were all at all the hangs, man. You spent your time on the hangs.
this guy has got a totally different background than these guys, but I think he can get along with anyone. So he put me in that position, and the chemistry of the band speaks for itself. I mean, Lord John Mayer, who I've got a lot of respect for, he released a video talking about how our camaraderie is what really makes our show unique, and I couldn't agree more with him. You know, and so time
I'm
rolled on.
so bummed, man. I had all the you guys played at this Coliseum right by me in New York back in I think
Fun.
it I don't I think it was the the
UBS
UBS Arena. Yeah.
in Long Island.
Um, I wasn't sure if it was Nassau Coliseum or if it was UBS Arena, which is where Trump was last night. Was Nassau Coliseum? So I was trying to remember which one was which. Yeah, it was UBS Arena, and I was trying all the intentions to get there because I wanted to see the live show, and I just couldn't make swing it. But
We're going to be back, so don't worry about that. You'll definitely get an opportunity if you want to see us. You'll definitely have an opportunity,
yeah, man.
but we'll be back even this
But
year.
that's what I've heard, man. Like
Yeah,
2024, within the next year, even.
we'll be back 3 nights at Barclays Center in Brooklyn in December.
Wow,
Yeah, we'll be back.
that's crazy.
But
Um,
we did all kinds of stuff. Sorry, what were you going to say?
well, what part of the reason I said that is I heard the same exact thing. The camaraderie on the stage is unmatched. And as a musician, man, that's what makes a show. Like, I don't want to go see a show where like, look, I won't name names, but I've seen some of my favorite bands live, and like it kind of just feels like we're playing the record. Like I'm like I kind of could have just like put the record on really really loud, and that's the song. But you didn't have the stage presence of them like interacting with each other, or like you missed all that, and it's like there's something about like the camaraderie on the stage where it just makes the show totally different than the record, obviously, and creates this almost I would actually debate the camaraderie on the stage creates a camaraderie inside the crowd, which then
That's
you're
right.
like grabbing the guy next to you that you've never even met, and you're like he's your new best friend.
It's contagious, and like the way
Yes.
Zach breaks up fights. I mean, we never see the fights happening anymore because there's too many people and it's too dark. But like in the past, when we'd be playing like sheds, and amphitheaters, or like festivals, Zach would see a fight start, and he'd be like, "Hey, stop, stop, stop! Hey, you guys, you're gonna stop fighting. Security's not gonna throw you out, and don't try and continue the fight in the parking lot afterwards. Okay? Thanks. Deal? Good. It's like we're all gonna be friends here.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna fight." Like they'd start the "fuck Joe Biden" chant, or "let's go Brandon" chant, and Zach would say, "Hey, let's just keep politics out of it. Like this is about the music."
Mm.
Right? Which I thought, especially in 2021, especially after we had pulled out of Afghanistan and the whole mess that was, um, it was a really important sentiment.
Well, it's a very unifying sentiment, regardless of politics. We're all still people, so you can which also creates the camaraderie of you, like the unity inside of that arena wherever you are.
Well, it's like he's just inviting you. It's like I'm inviting you guys to just take a step back from that and enjoy yourself for a couple
Yeah.
hours. and you can
Yeah.
go back to arguing when the show's over. But
Sure.
we're not going to make this a space for that. And I
Yeah,
think,
that's great, man. I admire that tremendously.
yeah. So it all came back to like a relationship that started for me my sophomore year of undergrad, and someone, Amir, who I'd kind of not fallen out of contact with, but just didn't see around much for many years because he was busy building his career and building his world. He was able to sort of put me in this position of something that, maybe it'll go somewhere, maybe it won't. And then
Yeah.
very quickly it became apparent that it was definitely going somewhere. Amir was
Yeah.
the tour manager for the first couple of years.
How long you met Amir in sophomore year? So that was when?
Sophomore year of college, so that would have been 2010.
Okay, and you started. He got you this gig. Is Amir the same one that connected you with Haley, or is that somebody different?
No, that was Balam. That was Balam.
Okay,
Yeah. But
so
Amir
then
and Balam are also friends, and actually, at one point, Balam was working briefly with Haley on one of her tours.
oh wow.
Yeah.
But then he got you. Amir got you the gig with Zach in 21.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Amir's thing now is just like, how can I optimize the numbers of a tour so that management is happy, money's being saved, but musicians are getting paid what they deserve. That's
Yeah,
an entire ethos
yeah,
when it comes to touring. Like, I make everybody happy.
yeah. So I want to hear the rest of the story, but I just want to make a comment really quickly that
Yeah.
that's 11 years. That's a long time. You know,
Relationship. Yeah.
what was it? Well,
Yeah,
yes,
long
no,
time.
absolutely. There's a long relationship as a friend, but also like say there. I don't know what your beliefs are in God, but I believe in God, and there's this phrase that says sometimes when things aren't going your way, it's like sometimes God's getting you ready for what He has ready for you. There's this concept of like you're over here in your own little world, and you don't know what, like you're doing your thing. Like, man, why isn't it taking so long? This isn't working out? Meanwhile, Amir's over here doing his thing, and he's building this thing, and
Exactly.
for all you know, 6 years from when you're thinking, or 2 years, or 1 year, whatever the case is, it aligns. You know what I'm saying? You can't see this, but it's come. And that's just the interesting thing about life, and
It is so interesting and so true. And while I wasn't raised in a super religious household, I mean, my dad was raised Christian, and my mom's parents were not religious. I think my mom's dad was studying to be a minister and then decided to throw the baby out with the bathwater for whatever reasons his reasons were. So I was not raised super religious. I'd go to church, different church services, usually more community oriented reasons than anything else like that. But I was not raised in any religious capacity. But I would say through my study of philosophy and through my own life experiences, yeah, I've had similar thought processes like you're describing just now. I sometimes my dad says to me, I certainly believe in some higher being, like something is definitely looking out for me. And I think I agree. Like, I mean, my concept of God is, without going too deep, it's more like everything in the universe is an extension of God, in a different capacity.
Hmm.
And you have to kind of, yeah, you have to kind of let it happen to not offend. You can't, if you go against the grain, things will be really, really hard for you. If you go with the flow, and and you stay focused on your path, and you don't let people walk all over you. That's not what I mean by go with the flow.
Sure.
You have to make hard decisions, and you have to,
Yeah,
but like you have to remain steadfast in your mission, but also let the universe work with you, and that in that sense, like, that's my understanding of
very
God.
interesting.
you know
Very
um
interesting.
but
So let's go back to the story now. I think it's what, 21.
yeah, 2021, so we started touring. We had gotten another drummer. He was formerly Zach's youth pastor, Steve Clark. Great guy. He's winning the fantasy football league right now. uh,
Between the band.
yeah, I'm actually not even in the league. I'm just the commissioner because the league was full, but I wanted to be involved because
What does that mean? The commissioner of the league, the fantasy football league. What does he mean?
it means that I write the power rankings and talk shit to them every week. Um, and I can veto trades, which
Oh
isn't
wow.
it isn't relevant yet, but it's mostly just somebody it's a formality. But I'm happy
Super.
that they chose to involve me because they talked about it nonstop, and I couldn't do another year of them screaming at each other about it without being involved. So,
Ah,
but yeah, they brought in Steve, and quickly thereafter, we did the first tour with that band, and then the second year we brought in Noah on guitar, and eventually we were Charles Wesley Godwin's band had been opening for us since the first tour. Zach decided, I love Charles. He's our opener from now on. Um, he hasn't been our opener this year in 2024, but up till the end of 2023, he was our direct support. And we picked up Reed on pedal steel, who has adopted the nickname Two Show because he was always playing two shows. He's playing in Charles' band and playing in our band. Sometimes there'd be difficult situations where he'd have to it's like, all right, I'm doing these dates with Charles. We need to get a sub, and that's actually how Noah ended up in the band because he was initially Reed's sub. He was
wow.
playing lap steel, but then it became more apparent that what he really wanted to do was just play regular guitar with a slide. So
Hmm.
that's sort of the capacity he fills in the band. Well, now he's just another, him and Graham just sort of trade rhythm and lead duties at
Hmm.
will. That was it for the band. We have a few people in our organization who occasionally join us on stage for, like one of our drum tech, Nate, who was our first tech on the tour. Anytime we play the song Starved, he comes and plays acoustic guitar because sometimes Zach's like, oh, I can't remember the chords. Nate, you got to play it
Uh,
the right way. And it's like, Zach, you play it just fine. I don't know what you're talking about. I always loved it the way when Zach was doing. I always loved the way he played it. But
yeah,
he,
yeah,
I think it's a part of that camaraderie.
yeah.
It's really more not so much that he doesn't know the song. It's that he wants Nate on stage, because he loves Nate. And so Nate will come on, and there's a guy named Elijah who comes and sings Ooze on the song Oklahoma Smoke Show, and
So
Dawn's.
let me ask you this now. So how long are these tours at this point?
So like between the beginning of March and the end of September,
That's a long tour. It's six
we were
months.
we were home a total of 7 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but most of that was April. The month of April, we had about 3 weeks off, and then we had like little bits of time off throughout, like a week and a half in July, two
So
weeks in June.
I
Yeah.
have two questions about that. The first question is, and you feel free to answer whatever you want of this. But I personally think it's an interesting aspect for like people starting out. Like if do you, with where you are in your career right now, like do you have to work outside of these tours, or is
No,
this enough for you? Okay,
absolutely not. I've never taken a non-music oriented job ever.
but I'm saying though, okay, also fair. But I'm saying at this level now, are you
Oh,
having
oh, outside of I
outside of touring right now, or is this
I don't
touring paying
have
your bill?
I don't have to work outside of. I mean, first of all, I'm in a kind of unique situation with Zach where we're taken very good care of, and
Sure.
I mean, I'm certainly not Mark Zuckerberg or anything, but I'm very well taken care of. I'm very comfortable, and I don't need to work outside of tour right now. But
Because I appreciate you being honest with that. Because the only reason I'm asking is I think that sometimes there are times where artists do have to work out a tour, and I think that like I want the artist that wants to be in your position one day, to understand just what the capacity of what that might look like.
the thing is, though, I still do work outside of tour.
Sure, because you want to.
And I'm still taking 2 to 5 gigs a week
Yeah,
while I'm home because
yeah,
that gives me life and that
yeah,
allows me to keep my connections
yeah,
alive. And if God forbid, we have a lighter year next year, I don't have the finalized schedule just yet. I know we're doing Stagecoach, but that's about all I know. Um, I imagine I will know very soon. But in any case, I don't have the finalized schedule. If it's a much
yeah,
longer year, and he's calling this tour the Quitting Time Tour, and he's saying this is my last tour ever.
yeah,
I think he's also said on Twitter, or X, he said, "Of course, I'm not gonna stop playing for good. I want to do like a couple shows a week off, couple shows a week off. I don't want to do long runs anymore."
yeah,
But who knows? Who knows? He's gonna do what he's gonna do, and I'm gonna be there for him in any capacity he
yeah.
wants me to be. And that's kind of the bottom line for my involvement.
So my next question regarding tour, though, now you mentioned earlier that you're in a relationship, and I'm curious, can you speak on how touring affects that, and how you any tips you have for any other musicians going on tour
Oh my
that how
God.
you manage a relationship on tour?
Oh man, you have to be really, really secure in your relationship.
Mm,
You have to have the confidence and the trust of the other person. And you have to earn that, of course,
sure.
but you also can't be in a relationship where somebody's constantly trying to keep tabs on you and
Mm,
micromanage you. That's not going to work with a touring lifestyle. You have to know that that's going to bring you heartache and it's not going to be worth it.
mm,
And they have to, they it's basically like this. Noah, because even with a great relationship, and by the way, everybody in the band is in a relationship, which is
mm,
crazy. Even with a great relationship, there's still going to be struggles. It's still going to
sure.
be hard then because human emotion is human emotion.
Absolutely.
And even if everybody's agreed and accepted what this is, you're still going to just have bad days.
Hmm.
So the bottom line is, I mean, I commit to, I fly my girlfriend Olivia out. If I'm going to be gone longer than 3 weeks, I'll fly her out at least once. If I'm going to be gone longer
Mm.
than 6 weeks, I'll fly her out at least twice.
Wow, cool.
Uh, and on my dime, of course,
Yeah.
because it's me who's made this choice to be gone so
Mm,
much, and I want her around as much as she wants to be around.
yeah.
But yeah, you have to make it work, and you have to both be somewhat independent and have your own things going on
Yeah.
to pass the time. You gotta manage reasonable expectations for communication. It's like, hey, during these hours I'm working. If you don't hear much from me, that's why. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And by that same token, you have to be proactive about reaching out when you do have
Mm,
time. It's not basically it can work, but
hmm.
it's not going to work if there's not a mutual love for what you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that advice. I think that's great advice. I want to be respectful of your time, so I want to wrap up with this question for you. Um, I want to know what the future looks like. What are you looking forward to? What do you see coming in the future? And what are you working towards?
Well, for one, I intend to continue going where the wind takes me in terms of working with Zach. I don't think it's even close to the end for him, and I hope that he'll continue to have me on board for whatever comes next. I know that there's at least one more record that he plans to have me record on. Uh,
Cool.
from my understanding, everything. Hey, these things can change. I
Absolutely.
was, I was on half of the self-titled record, and I was on 3 tracks on Great American Bar Scene. He uses a combination of us and other
Yeah.
musicians at will. In terms of my own aspirations, well, I don't want to call them aspirations. In terms of my own initiatives, I plan to
Mm.
continue working on my project with my girlfriend Olivia and releasing our music. Finish up the record we've been working on since 2019. We've released about 5 singles.
Hmm.
If you look for Zephyr Avalon and
Yeah.
Olivia
Yeah.
on any Olivia Jane and Zephyr Avalon on any streaming platform, you can check out our music, which is sort of a dream pop, neo soul, R&B vibe.
Yeah.
Which I produce that music. I'd like to get back into the production side of things. I can do it a little bit on the road, but it's just kind of tricky to keep
Yeah.
the the drive going with the rhythm of tour. And tour just
Mm.
kind of sucks you in. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if somebody else hires me to do something for them while I'm on the road, I'll make it happen for sure. But it's kind of hard to
Get your own initiative going.
it's kind of hard to keep both of my mind on both of those things at once. I
Yeah, I
can't
understand that.
immerse myself in one world or the other. That's
Yeah.
not true of everyone, but that's definitely true for me. And people shouldn't feel bad if that's the case for them, I would say. But it does make it very hard to get things done when I'm touring a lot.
Sure.
I'm probably in the next couple of days here going to start buckling down in my studio here and finishing tracks. I've got 2 more that are already done that are I just need album art for. But yeah, everything takes a concerted effort, and if you're working on it with somebody else, everybody has to agree, and then
Yeah.
send back and second draft, third draft.
Yeah.
Hopefully not a
So
fourth draft.
no. My final question for you, as we wrap things up, is if you could briefly describe now that you know where you are in your career, what is one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you first started out?
Basically, yeah, just trust the process. It
Mm,
takes time. Just be a good person, be a good hang. Put the music first, but don't set
mm,
aside humanity altogether in
yeah.
the name of the hustle. And also, if something's not meant to be, don't force it. Just
Mm,
walk away, you know? Just
great advice.
go with what's working.
Yeah.
Like that one meme you always see popping up on Instagram explore page. If it's not fuck yes, it's fuck no, right? I mean, I'm a kind of a gray area type of a guy. I never like to think in like black and white terms.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you'll save yourself a lot of time not
Yeah.
fighting fate. If you're working with someone and you're constantly disagreeing with them and it's consuming your
Mm,
life outside of what you're doing with them, just let it
yeah.
fall to the wayside and pursue things that don't cause you to feel that way. And
Yeah.
sometimes you'll be like, oh no, now I'm not doing anything. All right, well, allow yourself to forge a path the right way and heal.
Yeah.
And also, it's always going to be uncertain.
Mm.
Even when you have a good gig, it's always going to be uncertain. So, just because I have a good gig this year doesn't mean I'll have a good gig next year. I
It's
mean,
true, man. Just trust the process, like you said.
but you
Go
have
with the
to
flow.
invest in yourself, invest in your
Mm.
relationships with others, and stay true to your mission and know what the mission is.
Yeah.
One of the things that the Seven Habits says is, write a mission statement, right?
Yeah.
Which sounds cheesy on the surface, but it's not.
It
It's not cheesy.
works.
Yeah, it definitely works.
So
Big
just to
part of
recap, though, it really shows throughout your entire story how much the importance of community is involved and relationships are involved, and it's
it
just a
would
testament to the relationships mean so much.
without community, there would be yeah, without community, there wouldn't be a career. There wouldn't none of it exist if it wasn't for my family's musical background, their friends, my
Mm,
teachers, my friends, my very amazing Zach and Haley and all the other
mm,
amazing people that I've gotten to work for.
yeah.
They without that dynamic, it wouldn't work. Without a
Yeah.
personal dynamic, it wouldn't work. So community is incredibly important, and I try to find ways to give back to mine, even if that's just like hosting a weekly jam session or giving people guidance in the way they seek it from me. Um, you know,
It's
of
good
course,
stuff, man. Well,
yeah. There's always so much more to say, but I think you got the gist of
no, Zephyr, I really appreciate you taking the time, man. It's been a really great conversation. So I want to personally thank you, but I also want to personally thank every single person that listened to this podcast and this episode. If you made it to the end of this one, I want to just say thank you. And best way to support the channel is checking out my own original music. Consider subscribing, liking the video, but also go check out all the things that Zephyr's doing. Go follow him on social media and stay tuned for all the very exciting things. And if you're in the LA area, I'm sure he'd love for you to stop by. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but stop by one of those jams.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, every Tuesday at the San Fernando, Glendale, 8 p.m.
Love that, man. So
If
cool.
I'm not there, another band is there hosting it for me.
So good.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next episode. God bless and peace out.